With one of the most pivotal off seasons in the history of the Arizona Cardinals organization, one looming question still remains. Can the Arizona Cardinals win with Michael Bidwill owning the team? Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Today's episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Excuse me for my absence the last 2 days. I've been fighting something off, and I'm back. Hopefully my voice will continue to have sounds coming out of it. That was an issue the last couple days for me. There's a lot to discuss as we roll into the weekend here. Divisional round. Do you hope the Chiefs lose? Why should the Arizona Cardinals hope the Chiefs lose? I'll discuss. Kliff Kingsbury is getting an OC interview with the Chicago Bears. I'll hit that as well in the second segment. This first segment, and I'm happy somebody reached out and asked me this because I was going to discuss this, and I think maybe this is as good a time as any because this is truly like the hard reset pivoting into 2024, and Cardinals have money to spend. They've got draft capital abound, 6 picks in the top 96, I think, and a clear indicator that Kyler Murray is the quarterback for the future. So this is as good a time as any. Richard Revel, hopefully I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, DM me on Twitter and pretty much asked about Michael Bidwill. Should he sell the team? Should he step down and let another family member take over? And while those two probably aren't possible, first of all, and again, if you ever have any questions, you want me to do a segment on a topic that you'd like to discuss, DM me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Always. I'm going to do a lot of this offseason. So you better, if you're like, well, I wish you would talk about this, let me know. Seriously. And I read my DMs every day. I'm not always going to choose, but like, oh, well, this is, I talked about this yesterday, things like that. But if it's something that, you really want to hear about, and maybe you missed on a past podcast that I discussed, I'm happy to chop it up and make this as much your podcast as it is mine. Okay. I mean that. So I'm taking what Richard asked me and kind of pivoting it into this. While I don't think Michael Bidwill is ever going to sell the team, and while I don't think he's ever going to be forced to sell the team unless something else happens. There are there's the McDonough trial still going on with his allegations of the Steve Wilkes burner phones with Steve Keim and his not so great treatment of his former employees, which is not something to be overlooked whatsoever. I do talk about on this podcast a lot. This is a football podcast, and those things, while incredibly important and serious, and if more allegations come out, maybe we revisit this conversation, but as things currently sit, Michael Bidwill is not selling the team. Okay. So it pivots to the question with this hard reset into 2024 with a stronger foundation that we've seen the Cardinals have in a long time, at least the valuation of a very strong foundation, at least with a trajectory of continuing to build this foundation so it is, completely rock solid. Can the Cardinals win with Michael Bidwill as the owner? Because that is going to be the much more likely scenario, is that Michael Bidwill will be the all-seeing power, and you've got Monti Ossenfort down to be able to make this team a winner. And my simple answer is yes, and let me explain. One of my favorite analogies to use, and everydayers, you've heard this, but I think that it's important to reinforce certain things on this show and things that I believe about this team. One of my favorite analogies to use is there's a tent that people use for weddings when there's inclement weather, or for other reasons you can have a full-blown wedding under these massive tents. okay? And the way I see Monti Ossenfort down to, coaches, players, training staff, whatever it is an entity inside of State Farm Stadium underneath a tent like that. And the rest is Michael Bidwill. So I think that as an isolated group, the Cardinals can do whatever they want with Michael Bidwill signing the checks. And to Michael Bidwill's credit, for this specific instance, he's done everything he said he was going to do since firing Steve Keim and Kliff Kingsbury. He hired way outside the box, both GM and head coach, neither of whom had had that position before. Coordinators never had that position before. And just let Monti Ossenfort do his thing. You could tell in that draft room clip when he traded the third overall pick, Michael Bidwill just, what's going on here? And then Jonathan Gannon's sitting there like it's his first day of school, more giddy than anything, and you just let Monty work. And that's what it's supposed to be. I used to joke that Michael Bidwill ran the Arizona Cardinals like they'd won 10 Super Bowls. Don't worry, guys. We know what we're doing here. Let us do it again. And it just was never the case. It's the definition of insanity. And then when there were the reports 2 years ago where, it feels so good to say 2 years ago, doesn't it? When Michael Bidwill was watching film with Steve Keim and Kliff Kingsbury, Michael Bidwill watching film is like me watching a foreign picture without subtitles. Maybe the greatest movie in the world, but if I can't speak the language, it doesn't matter. Michael Bidwill is not a football guy. He's not a football guy. So if he can put what great leaders do, whether it be an owner of an organization, a CEO of a company, whatever it may be, what great leaders do is they find talent, put those people into positions of power, and let them do their job. Because if you hire properly, you ain't got to do their job for them. And I know it's been kind of muddy with Steve Keim over the last decade, where it was just, I don't know how much just carte blanche Steve Keim had to do to just take a dart and throw it at a dart. We're like, drafting that guy. I'm never going to lose my job. Doesn't matter. Now it seems like a very clear-cut, power ranking of employees with the Cardinals, and Monti Ossenfort just doing his thing. And Michael Bidwill, all Michael Bidwill has to do is just sit there, fold his hands, and watch good things happen and take all the credit because he hired those people. And that's what the owner of a professional football team should be doing. But if he's going to try to be a poor man Jerry Jones, you're going to have some issues. And I feel like at this point, since letting go of Steve Keim and Kliff Kingsbury, he has done everything he said he was going to do. So maybe that was the real equilibrium moment for him where it's like, okay, things need to change. Maybe I'll listen to what everybody has said that I'm doing wrong and do things differently. And he has. And is it going to work out? We have no idea. That last year was a total free pass. All you needed to do was see if the rookies played well, where are these veterans, what veterans are going to be part of this team moving forward, and if Kyler Murray's your QB1, probably in inverse order of importance. The actual, pressure is going to start this year. Pressure. Jonathan Gannon, Drew Petzing, Nick Rallis are going to have to actually, when you actually have talent, barring anybody, injured and barring Monti Ossenfort sitting on his hands again in free agency, which it's not going to happen. We're going to find out next year what this is all about. And all we can do right now is take the data that we have, crunch the numbers, and see if it's the right situation. So to answer the question, Richard, thank you for reaching out to me again. If you have any questions and you want to have a conversation, DM me on Twitter. I don't do it for follows. I just want to engage as much as I possibly can. Do I see Michael Bidwill being forced to sell the team or selling the team or handing off reins, control to somebody else? No, absolutely not. Can the Cardinals win with Michael Bidwill as the owner? 1,000,000%. And through 1 year of functionality, I guess you could say, even though I know they only won a couple games. I know that, Jonathan Gannon wasn't perfect. Drew Petzing wasn't perfect. Nick Roush wasn't perfect. But you cannot tell the future of what this coaching staff and GM will be through that year. If the criticism starts next year, I guess that's just the cycle of the NFL. But all in all, to answer the question very simply, can the Cardinals win with the owner who's currently in place? 1,000,000%. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Old Cliffy baby is getting some looks. And this is not going to be a pile on Kliff Kingsbury segment whatsoever. Okay? Whatsoever. I just still want to talk about it, and it's going to be fun. That's next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by eBay Motors. And, passion, drive, and patience. 3 things. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps you ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP, bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. And this episode of Locked On Cardinals is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is, we've only got a few weeks left, man. It's wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is super easy to use. There's so many different ways you can bet, like live same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays. If you want to pick who's going to win the Super Bowl, you can do that. It's this weekend coming up. We have no idea what's going to happen. Sure, they're the favorites, with San Francisco and Baltimore being almost 10-point favorites each. We've seen crazier things happen, and you can get all the action you need at FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Please go to the YouTube channel. I can't be more thankful. I hit 3,000 subscribers over the weekend. Thank you very much if you've been here since day one. If this is your first listen to Locked On Cardinals, thank you. Maybe make Monday your second listen. I have fun every day doing this. I would not be here without you. And thank you. So, Kliff Kingsbury. Now, after that sweet note, Kliff Kingsbury is getting OC interviews. And listen, Chicago Bears, I'm assuming, sure. Maybe they're bringing him in to give him a look and see what is between his ears. Also, they may just want to find out more about Caleb Williams. I wanted to do this segment because I think that over Kliff Kingsbury's time as a head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, he deserved the criticism that he got. He did not deserve the extension that he got. And there were some glimpses of, where the hell has that been? And the frustrating part was, it never got better. Say his 2019 year, okay, they won 5 games. Didn't have a great roster, coming off statistically one of the worst offenses in the history of football. One of my favorite stats to use is the Cardinals in 2018 scored less points per game than the 2008 Detroit Lions, who went 0-16. Okay, so it wasn't great. Steve Wilkes probably should have got another year, shouldn't have got fired after 1 year. Steve Keim should have been fired. We can talk about all that, at a later date or never. But Kliff Kingsbury came in and he wasn't terrible his rookie year as a head coach. Kyler Murray was a rookie. You have all those built-in excuses, reasons more so. Second year is really, when you start to announce yourself as a head coach one way or the other, good or bad. 2020, they had a hot start. There was the game against Seattle during the pandemic year where Isaiah Simmons had that interception in overtime. They ended up kicking a field goal, Zane Gonzalez, and winning that game. And it was like, oh, okay, 6-5-3. Okay, so starting to move in 2020. And then 2021 came around and nothing had changed. And if you don't adapt in this league, you're not going to be successful for very long. And while I probably didn't give him as much credit as I should have in 2021, the reason for it was because I saw the same issues that I saw in 2019. And that's just, it's what it was. Bad penalties. Let's take the penalties away. All the false start penalties, because the Cardinals were one of the most penalized teams in the NFL this year. Okay, so let's even take that away. Clock management, timeout management, and the amount of 3 and outs that happened with under 1 minute of being on the field blew my mind. It was like Kyler Murray would have to bail him out constantly. And sure, Kyler Murray hasn't been perfect, of course. But the pivot from Kliff Kingsbury to Jonathan Gannon, this is no direct ill will towards Kliff Kingsbury. When I talk about these people, I'm talking about the avatar as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. These are never personal. I've got to interview Kliff Kingsbury a couple times. Nice guy, soft spoken, nice dude. That's never been what this is about. He just couldn't cut it when getting guys prepared for game day. And that could mean various things with various different teams, different, roster structure, and, different allocation of where the stars are. Like every coach gets a team up in different ways. Like look at what Mike Tomlin did. 10 wins with that team, with that quarterback. Are you kidding me? Like it doesn't always have to be Dan Campbell being the rah-rah guy when you have now a stacked roster because you hit on drafts, you hit on free agency. That's not what it is. Jonathan Gannon had these guys prepared every week this week. Nick Rallis had this very undermanned, under-talented defense ready to play every week and had them in contention. The Cardinals definitely could have won 5 out of their first 8 games. Definitely could have with this roster. That's the difference. And it's not like, oh, any given Sunday. Yeah, sure. Any given Sunday doesn't happen for the majority of a season. So while the win-loss at the end of the year wasn't great, how they lost, this is going to sound so like, how they lost was impressive. And that's not like that was an impressive loss. How do you lose by 60? No. The vibe was different. And it wasn't because it wasn't Kliff. I get constant comments. Well, yeah, you're just excited because it wasn't Kliff Kingsbury. But I don't even think about Kliff anymore. In a vacuum, if the greatest head coach of all time just retired, was with the Cardinals for 50 years, and then retired, and then Jonathan Gannon was next and Monti Ossenfort was next, it'd be the same thing. They were prepared every day. And while there wasn't pressure on them to win this year, sure, we can revisit this later. I don't see how others don't see that this was a massive step up from where the Cardinals were. So, Kliff, hopefully gets a gig. I don't know if he's going to be used as bait for Caleb Williams. I don't know how close he and Caleb Williams are. He's only been there for 15 minutes at USC. They lost a whole bunch of games this year. Sure, the defense was terrible, but I don't know. Kliff Kingsbury continues to fail calculus and then get promoted to calculus AP. It's like the 8th wonder of the world. Kliff Kingsbury is the 8th wonder of the world. When he is not wearing socks. Both. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Why should the Cardinals hope the Chiefs lose this weekend to Buffalo? That's called a tease. I'll discuss that next as we roll on here. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by PrizePicks. I love PrizePicks, man. I love Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy made easy. You're not going up against a bunch of sharks or a bunch of different people in general. It's you versus the projections. You pick 2 or more players, and then you pick more or less than their projected stats, and that's it. That's it. And the coolest part about it is, like, now with basketball and football season happening, you can combine your projections in the specials league where it's like, so say LeBron and Travis Kelce, more or less than 10.5, 3-pointers and receptions combined. You can deposit super quickly with Apple Pay, quick withdrawals, if I can speak. They even have this reboot policy that if a player gets hurt in the first half in football or basketball and doesn't come back in the second half, that player is rebooted in your picks. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Final segment, Alex Clancy. Thanks for hanging out. Sorry about missing the last couple days. A little under the weather. Back at it. My voice seems to be cooperating, which is fantastic. Not great for some if they don't like hearing what comes out of my big dumb face. Go to Locked On Cardinals on YouTube. Search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button. Would love to see those numbers skyrocket. I'm just happy being here. I'm happy that you're here every dayers. Thanks if you've been here since 2017, or if this is your first listen. Thank you all the same. Why should the Arizona Cardinals hope that the Chiefs lose on Sunday? Hint, it has nothing to do with the Houston Texans draft pick. So if you guessed that before the break, sorry. It's because the Kansas City Chiefs roster is going to have a massive overhaul next year, it seems. If they lose, especially. Now, they've had Buffalo's number, but they are going to Orchard Park, so we'll see. It's going to be probably the marquee matchup of the weekend. And there's one player specifically who had a contract, issue going into this season, kept him out of mandatory minicamp. He got ready and started playing at the beginning of the season, and he plays a position the Arizona Cardinals desperately need help in. And the Cardinals have some cheese this offseason to be able to go sign a couple big-name free agents. And while they've got 6 picks in the top 100, signing a notable star at this position where you can set and forget would be massively important for the Cardinals. And that is defensive lineman Chris Jones. And Chris Jones is going to be expensive. Okay. Chris Jones also was already on rocky terms with the Chiefs and his contract situation going into this season. So if the Chiefs lose, it is going to be a lot easier to look and just kind of disband, as opposed to if they win and they make a run and they win the Super Bowl, running it back seems to be that it would be, a lot more palatable because they've already won 2. So this isn't like, Chris Jones is like Von Miller, who I think got traded to the Rams, won a Super Bowl, and then just went and got paid by Buffalo. I don't think that's this. Like, they've already won before. So if they win again, it's like, okay, let's see if we can get 4. We've got something good here. Let's reboot. Let's reconstruct, all of these contracts, and let's move on and keep going with this thing. If they lose, and if they lose by a good amount, 10 points, 13, 14 points, and the game's not close, and you can kind of see the writing on the wall, Chris Jones most likely will be gone. And I think the Cardinals should open their arms, pay him, and just set and forget to a guy who was an absolute offensive scheme disruptor. And the Cardinals haven't really had that defensive. Like Chandler Jones was, they had a better linebacking core than they had. Patrick Peterson, who was in his prime. They had Tyrann Mathieu, who was kind of who was a disruptor, but having a guy like him on the defensive line would be an absolute game changer immediately. And the Cardinals are at the perfect time. It's the perfect spot to now go splurge on big name free agents. It's time. So if you told me that the Cardinals went and signed one of the top corners and Chris Jones this offseason and used the majority of their cap space on those two guys, like, run it. Run it. Because you cannot put a price on what Chris Jones does for a team. It's night and day. The Chiefs' defense is night and day with Chris Jones on and off the field. And it's something that, he's 29 years old. Okay, he'll be 30 by the start of next season. But I'll tell you what. I mean, Aaron Donald's 32. Okay, Chris Jones can play another 3 really good years. So you sign him to, a 4-year, whatever $1 million deal. You make a team option, or you have an out after the 3rd year, or even an out after the 2nd year. Because here's the thing. There's going to have to be a contingency plan for if this doesn't work. Like, if 2024 is a disaster, if Kyler Murray just isn't the guy, and the draft picks aren't, and they bomb on the draft or whatever. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. It most likely won't. But it just needs to be, that rock needs to be kind of looked under quickly, and then we can move on. Like, they need to be able to have a way to evacuate all of these contracts if it doesn't work. If another reset is needed. Probably not going to happen. But I feel like Chris Jones would be a perfect guy for this defense. He can kind of do as he pleases up front because the scheme is kind of malleable depending on that's what Jonathan Gannon said. He goes, I don't really have a scheme per se. We kind of look at the opposing offense and just put players in positions to succeed. Imagine how much better the pass rush will be if opposing offensive linemen need to watch after Chris Jones. Imagine how much easier pass rushers' jobs will be if he gets double teamed every single passing play. The Cardinals can have nice things, just in general. And a player like Chris Jones would be an absolute game changer for this organization. So, if you want to have the best chance of signing Chris Jones this offseason, root for the Chiefs to lose this weekend. Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals. Remember, without you, there is no me. I'll talk to you on Monday.